She lifted the bed, and the alpha's dying pup looked straight at her. I never wanted to be noticed again. After my birth pack branded me Wolfless and discarded me like a broken tool, I vowed to vanish into the shadows of the Silver Ridge Pack, living as a nameless servant whose only goal was to remain invisible. But on my first night in the drafty servant quarters, as I reached beneath my narrow cot to stow my only bag, the dim moonlight revealed a nightmare. A werewolf pup, his silver fur matted with dark, iron-scented blood, lay trembling in the dust. My breath hitched as I knelt on the cold stone floor. The pup's golden eyes, vibrant but fatting, locked onto mine, pleading with a silent agony that no child should know. I knew what helping him would mean. In a pack this prestigious, a wolfless omega touching the alpha's heir was more than a taboo. It was a death sentence. My former alpha's voice echoed in my head, reminding me that I was empty, a hollow vessel with nothing to offer the world of wolves. But as the pup let out a wet, rattling gasp, the wall I had built around my heart shattered. I could not let this innocent life flicker out just to keep my own existence a secret. I reached out, my fingers trembling, and as I touched his cooling skin, a strange, ancient warmth began to radiate from my palms, a heat I had spent a lifetime suppressing. I poured every ounce of my forbidden vitality into him, watching the light return to his eyes even as my own strength waned. I knew this single act of mercy had just painted a target on my back. Someone powerful was coming for this boy, and because of the heat now binding us together, they would have to come through me first. If you would walk away instead of looking under the bed, this story would have ended differently. The servants' hall still smelled of stale ash and the cold, oppressive stone of the mountain. Outside, the wind howled through the Silver Ridge peaks, a predatory sound that seemed to be searching for the very secret I now held in my arms. The scent of expensive cedar and predatory power began to leak under the door. The alpha was near. I pressed my back against the bed frame, the pup's heartbeat drumming a frantic rhythm against my own. I had come here to find a new life, but as the heavy boots of Alpha Jamie thundered down the corridor, I realized the life I had found was likely going to be the end of me. Stories like this don't start loud, they start hidden. The door didn't open, it exploded inward, the wooden frame splintering like brittle bone. Mickey's scream died in her throat as a massive shadow filled the doorway, eyes blazing gold in the darkness. Alpha Jamie. She'd never seen him up close, only heard the whispered warnings from the other servants during the long carriage ride to Silver Ridge. They said his wolf was so dominant that lesser pack members had fainted just from standing in his presence. They said he'd killed 3 rogues with his bare hands last winter. They said his mate's death had turned something inside him cold and merciless. Now he was here, in her tiny servant's quarters, and the air itself seemed to bend around his fury. "Where is he?" The alpha's voice was barely human, distorted by the growl vibrating through his chest. Blood scent rolled off him in waves, not his own, but something that made every instinct in Mickey's body scream run. "I can smell my son's blood. What did you do?" Mickey pressed herself against the wall, her arms instinctively tightening around the small, fragile body she'd pulled from beneath the bed. The pup's breathing had finally steadied after she'd pressed her palms to his chest and willed every drop of warmth in her body into his failing heartbeat. She didn't understand what she'd done or how it had worked. She only knew that the rattling gasps had smoothed into something almost peaceful. I found him," she whispered, even as Jamie crossed the room in 2 massive strides. "He was under my bed. He was dying." "And you touched him." Jamie's hand shot out, fingers closing around her throat. Not squeezing, not yet, but the threat was absolute. His palm was furnace-hot against her skin, and she could feel the tremor of barely leashed violence in every finger. "You, a wolfless nothing, put your cursed hands on the heir of Silver Ridge." Mickey couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The pressure on her windpipe wasn't what paralyzed her. It was the savage, feral grief in those golden eyes. This wasn't just an alpha protecting his territory. This was a father who'd already lost everything once. "Alpha," her voice came out strangled, desperate. "Alpha, please, he's breathing. Listen." For a moment, she thought Jamie would crush her throat anyway. His entire body was rigid with killing intent, muscles coiled beneath his torn shirt. Then his head tilted, just slightly, and his nostrils flared. The change was instantaneous. Jamie released her so abruptly that Mickey stumbled, nearly dropping the pup. The alpha dropped to his knees beside her cot, his massive hands that had just been wrapped around her neck, now reaching out with trembling gentleness toward the small bundle in her arms. "Connor," the name broke on Jamie's lips like a prayer. "Connor, can you hear me?" The pup stirred, his little fingers curling against Mickey's collarbone. His eyes didn't open, but a soft whimper escaped his throat, the first sound he'd made since she'd found him. Jamie's head snapped up, and Mickey flinched at the raw intensity in his stare. But it wasn't rage anymore. It was something infinitely more dangerous. "What did you do?" he demanded, but the violence had drained from his voice, replaced by a desperate, aching confusion. "He's been dying for weeks. The physicians said there was nothing." His gaze dropped to where Mickey's hands still rested against Connor's tiny back, then back to her face. "You're wolfless. You shouldn't be able to." "I don't know what I did," Mickey whispered. I couldn't let him die." What she found under that bed wasn't meant to survive the night. The pack physician arrived at dawn, a severe woman with silver streaking her dark hair and eyes that had seen too many deaths. Dr. Marin swept into the servants' quarters like a winter storm, her medical bag clutched tight, her lips pressed into a bloodless line. Behind her, half the pack council crowded into the doorway, their faces twisted with disgust as they stared at Mickey still cradling the sleeping pup. "Unnatural," someone hissed, "a wolfless touching the air." "Silence!" Jamie's command cracked through the room like a whip. He hadn't moved from his position beside Mickey's cot, hadn't taken his eyes off his son's steady breathing. "Marin, examine him." The physician knelt, her weathered hands moving with practiced efficiency over Connor's small body. She checked his pulse, his temperature, peeled back his eyelids to study his pupils. With each passing moment, her frown deepened. "His fever's broken," she murmured, more to herself than anyone else. "The inflammation in his lungs, it's receding. His heartbeat is strong." She looked up at Jamie, something like fear flickering across her features. "Alpha, 3 days ago I told you to prepare for his death, whatever she did." "I didn't do anything," Mickey said quickly, too quickly. "I just held him. I swear I didn't mean to." "You stabilized a dying pup with nothing but your touch." Marin's gaze was clinical, dissecting. "That's not nothing, girl. That's impossible." She reached toward Connor, her fingers barely brushing his forehead before the pup whimpered and burrowed deeper against Mickey's chest. The physician froze, tried again. This time Connor's face crumpled, a distressed keen rising in his throat even though his eyes remained closed. "No," Marin breathed. "No, this can't be." She pulled back, and instantly Connor settled, his breathing evening out. The physician's hands trembled as she opened her medical bag and withdrew a leather-bound journal, its pages yellowed with age. She flipped through it frantically, muttering under her breath. "Soul anchoring. I thought it was just legend, a story from the old times before the Great Divide." "Speak plainly," Jamie growled. Marin snapped the journal shut. "Your son has formed a soul anchor to this girl. His life force is now tethered to hers. If she leaves, if she's taken beyond a certain distance, his body will interpret it as a severing. He'll die within hours." The silence that followed was suffocating. "That's impossible," someone from the council spat. "She's an Omega, a broken one. She doesn't even have a wolf to bond with." "Which is precisely why it worked." Marin stood, her expression grim. "Soul anchoring requires absolute vulnerability. A dominant wolf spirit would have overwhelmed the pup's weakened state. But she..." The physician gestured at Mickey with something approaching reluctant respect. "She has no wolf to dominate him, only warmth, only human compassion. It was exactly what his dying spirit needed." Jamie's jaw clenched so hard Mickey heard his teeth grind. He stared at her, at his son sleeping peacefully in her arms, and she watched something crack behind those golden eyes. Pride, perhaps, or the last remnants of control. "Move her to the royal wing," he said flatly. "She stays with Connor at all times." The council erupted. Voices overlapped in furious protest. "Disgrace, abomination, she'll poison his bloodline." But Jamie rose to his full height, and the alpha power that radiated from him made every wolf in the room bare their throat in submission. "My son lives because of her," he said, his voice deadly quiet. "Anyone who has a problem with that can challenge me directly." No one moved. Jamie's gaze found Mickey's, and she saw the terrible burden settling onto both their shoulders. "Pack your things, Omega. You belong to us now." The royal wing was a cage made of silk and marble. Mickey's new quarters adjoined Connor's nursery through a door that Jamie had ordered to remain unlocked at all times. The room was larger than any space she'd ever inhabited. A four-poster bed draped in midnight blue, windows that overlooked the sprawling pack grounds, furniture carved from ancient oak. It should have felt like a dream. Instead, it felt like a noose tightening slowly around her neck. "Look at it, playing dress-up in our world." Mickey kept her eyes down as three she-wolves circled her in the hallway outside Connor's nursery. She recognized the leader, Vivienne, Jamie's cousin, with her perfect auburn curls and a smile sharp enough to draw blood. The other two were her shadows, equally beautiful, equally cruel. "The alpha's pet," Vivienne continued, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Tell me, Wolfless, do you sleep in his bed yet, or does he keep you in a kennel?" "I sleep in my own room," Mickey said quietly, clutching the bundle of Connor's freshly laundered clothes against her chest. "Near Connor, that's all." "That's all?" Vivienne's laugh was like broken glass. "You hear that, girls? She thinks proximity to the heir is nothing, as if every eligible she-wolf in 3 territories hasn't been vying for that position since the Luna died." One of the shadows stepped closer, her nose wrinkling. "I can't even smell a wolf on her. It's like she's empty, hollow." "Because she is hollow." Vivienne's perfectly manicured hand shot out, knocking the clothes from Mickey's arms. They scattered across the polished floor, and Mickey dropped to her knees immediately, gathering them up with shaking fingers. The moon goddess herself rejected her, and now she's allowed to touch the future alpha? It's an insult to everything we are. Mickey's throat burned, but she kept collecting the scattered garments. She'd learned long ago that fighting back only made it worse. That silence was survival. "My cousin must be desperate," Vivienne murmured, crouching down until her face was level with Mickey's. "Or maybe he's just using you as a convenient incubator for his son's life force. The moment Connor is strong enough to survive without you, do you really think Jamie will keep a wolfless nothing in his home?" Her fingers caught Mickey's chin, forcing eye contact. "You're temporary, sweetheart. A bandage. And bandages get thrown away once the wound heals." The words struck deeper than any physical blow. Because Vivienne was right, Mickey had thought the same thing every night as she lay awake in that too-large bed. Jamie barely spoke to her except to ask about Connor's condition. The pack treated her like a ghost, stepping around her in corridors, falling silent when she entered rooms. Even the servants who'd once been her equals now refused to meet her eyes, as if her elevation had made her something obscene. "Vivienne," the voice cut through the hallway like a blade. All 3 she-wolves straightened instantly, their cruel smiles evaporating. Jamie stood at the end of the corridor, still dressed in his training leathers, sweat dampening his dark hair. But it was the cold fury in his expression that made even Vivienne take a step back. "Alpha," she stammered, "we were just harassing the woman who saved my son's life." Jamie's boots struck the marble with deliberate, measured steps as he approached. "The woman who is under my direct protection. Tell me, cousin, did you think I wouldn't hear about this?" Vivienne's face paled. "I meant no disrespect." "Then show her the respect she's earned." Jamie's gaze swept over all 3 she-wolves, and Mickey watched them physically shrink under the weight of his alpha dominance. "Or find another pack to call home." "If you were Mickey, would you hide the pup or report it back to the pack?" Mickey woke to the sound of breaking glass. She was on her feet before conscious thought caught up, her body moving on instinct toward Connor's nursery. But the toddler slept peacefully in his crib, one tiny fist curled beneath his chin, moonlight painting him in shades of silver. The sound had come from elsewhere, from Jamie's private chambers at the far end of the wing. She should go back to bed, should pretend she'd heard nothing. Jamie's grief was not her business, not her burden to shoulder. But another crash echoed through the silence, followed by a sound that made her chest tighten, a low, anguished groan that barely sounded human. Her feet carried her to his door before she could second-guess the decision. "Alpha," she knocked softly, aware that disturbing him could be dangerous. When no answer came, she pushed the door open. Jamie's chambers were in chaos. A crystal decanter lay shattered against the far wall, amber liquid dripping down the wallpaper. Books had been swept from shelves. And in the center of it all, the most powerful alpha in 3 territories sat slumped on the edge of his massive bed, his head in his hands, his entire body shaking. "Get out," he rasped without looking up. "That's an order." Mickey stepped inside anyway and closed the door behind her. "You're burning up." That made him lift his head. His eyes were fever-bright, his skin flushed and sheened with sweat. Lycanthropy ran hot, but this was different. This was a body eating itself from the inside out. "Nightmare fever," she said quietly, recognition clicking into place. She'd read about it in one of the old texts her grandmother had left her, back when she'd still hoped her wolf might emerge. "Your wolf is fighting something, a memory maybe, or grief." I said get out, but the command had no force behind it. Jamie tried to stand and swayed, catching himself against the bedpost. I don't want." "I know." Mickey moved to his side, her small hands steadying his arm. His skin burned against her palms, but she didn't let go. "You don't want help. You don't want witnesses. You especially don't want the Wolfless Omega seeing you like this." She guided him back to sit on the bed. "But Connor needs you alive, so you're going to let me help anyway." For a moment, she thought he might snarl at her, might shove her away with enough force to break bones. Instead, Jamie laughed, a broken, bitter sound. "You're not afraid of me," he said, as if the realization startled him. "Everyone else, even my own counsel, they can barely stand in the same room. But you—" His fever-bright eyes searched her face. "Why aren't you afraid?" Mickey considered the question as she retrieved a washcloth from his bathroom and dampened it with cool water. "Maybe because I've never had a wolf to tell me I should be," she said honestly. She pressed the cloth to his forehead, and Jamie's eyes fluttered closed. "Or maybe because you've never actually hurt me, despite having plenty of reasons to." "I almost killed you," he reminded her hoarsely. "That first night, I had my hand around your throat." "Almost doesn't count." She moved the cloth to his neck, his temples. "You stopped, that's what matters." Jamie caught her wrist, but gently, so gently it made her breath catch. "She would have hated you," he whispered. "My mate, my Luna. She was beautiful and strong and everything a werewolf queen should be. And she died screaming, Mickey. Died giving birth to Connor while I held her hand and couldn't do a damn thing to save her." His grip tightened, not enough to hurt, but enough that she felt his trembling. "I've spent 3 years trying to keep our son alive, trying to be both mother and father, and I was failing. And then you—" His voice cracked. "A wolfless nobody saves him with nothing but her bare hands, and I don't know whether to worship you or hate you for showing me how powerless I really am." Mickey found the first vial 3 weeks into her new life, in the royal wing. She'd been changing Connor's bedding, a task the royal nursemaids had forgotten to complete, when her fingers brushed against something smooth and cold wedged between the mattress and the ornate bed frame. The glass tube was no longer than her thumb, stoppered with wax, containing perhaps a thimbleful of clear liquid that caught the afternoon light like liquid diamond. Her grandmother's voice echoed from childhood, clear as water, sweet as honey, deadly as nightshade. "That's how the old poisons work, little one. They make you welcome death like a friend." Mickey's hands went numb. She sat on the nursery floor, the vial clutched against her chest, trying to force her racing thoughts into some semblance of order. Connor hadn't been sick. The mysterious illness that had baffled every physician, that had brought the mighty Alpha to his knees, it hadn't been an illness at all. Someone had been poisoning the air to Silver Ridge. And they'd hidden the evidence in his own bed, where only the most trusted servants would ever look. Where no one would ever think to search, because who would dare harm a child under the Alpha's protection? The answer made her stomach turn. Someone high-ranking enough to access the royal wing freely. Someone trusted enough that their presence wouldn't raise suspicion. Mickey pressed her palm to Connor's door and felt the warmth of his sleeping presence on the other side. He'd been getting stronger every day, his cheeks filling out, his laughter returning. Because she slept in the adjoining room now. Because she held him every night, her wolfless touch somehow filtering out whatever poison lingered in his small body. But if the poisoner realized their weapon was no longer working, if they decided to switch tactics. You look like you've seen a ghost. Mickey spun, clutching the vial behind her back. Dr. Marin stood in the nursery doorway, her medical bag in hand for Connor's weekly examination. The physician's sharp eyes missed nothing, tracking from Mickey's white face to her hidden hands. What are you holding? Nothing, but lying to Marin was pointless. The woman had been a healer for 40 years. She could probably smell deception. Mickey's shoulders sagged, and she held out the vial. I found it in Connor's bed. Marin's expression transformed from curiosity to horror in the space of a heartbeat. She snatched the vial, held it up to the light, unstoppered it, and brought it carefully to her nose. The color drained from her face. Wolfsbane extract, she whispered. Diluted enough that a single dose wouldn't kill, just weaken, make sick, and if administered consistently over months. She looked at Mickey with something approaching awe. Your touch has been purging it from his system. That's why he stabilized the moment you held him. That's why he can't bear to be separated from you. You're not just a soul anchor, you're an antidote. Who would do this? Mickey's voice broke. He's just a child, he's the only thing standing between someone and the Alpha's seat. Marin's jaw clenched. If Connor died, Jamie would be vulnerable, mad with grief, easy to challenge, easy to overthrow. She gripped Mickey's shoulders, her fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. You cannot tell anyone about this. Not yet. If the poisoner knows we've discovered their method, they'll change tactics. They'll come at the boy or you directly. Then what do we do? We catch them. Marin's eyes were flint. And we need to start by finding out who has unrestricted access to this wing. But this decision would cost her more than she imagined. The gown was a declaration of war. Midnight blue silk that matched Jamie's formal attire, cut to accentuate curves Mickey hadn't realized she possessed. Dr. Marin had insisted, if we're using you as bait, we'll make sure every wolf in that ballroom can't look away. Mickey's hands trembled as she fastened the delicate silver chain around her throat, its pendant resting just above her collarbone like a brand. You don't have to do this. Jamie stood in her doorway, devastating in his alpha formal wear, charcoal suit that emphasized his broad shoulders, silver embroidery that marked his rank. But his expression was troubled, almost tender. I can find another way to draw them out. Connor sleeps 30 feet from where we're standing. Mickey turned from the mirror to face him. If there's even a chance the poisoner will reveal themselves tonight, I have to try. Something flickered in Jamie's eyes, respect, maybe, or the beginning of something more dangerous. He crossed the room and held out his arm. Then stay close to me. The moment anything feels wrong, you get behind me. Understood. She placed her hand in the crook of his elbow, feeling the coiled strength beneath his sleeve. Understood. The grand hall had been transformed into something from a fever dream. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across the assembled wolves, silver ridges elite dressed in their finest, alongside visiting alphas from neighboring territories. The air was thick with competing dominance, with territorial tension barely masked by political smiles. Every eye turned when Jamie entered with Mickey on his arm. The whispers started immediately, spreading through the crowd like wildfire. The Wolfless Omega, informal wear, escorted by the Alpha himself. Mickey felt the weight of hundreds of stares, heard the sharp intake of scandalized breaths. Vivienne stood near the refreshment table, her face twisted with barely suppressed fury. Steady, Jamie murmured, his hand covering hers where it rested on his arm. Let them look. Let them see that you belong here. The orchestra struck up a waltz, and before Mickey could process what was happening, Jamie was guiding her onto the dance floor. His hand settled at her waist, large and warm, anchoring her as couples parted around them like water around stone. I don't know how to, she started, panicked. Follow my lead. His voice was low, meant only for her. And watch the crowd while we move. Someone here knows what wolfsbane looks like. Someone here has been slipping into the royal wing for months. They'll be watching you closely tonight, trying to figure out why Connor is still alive. Mickey let Jamie guide her through the steps, her body learning the rhythm even as her mind catalogued faces. The visiting alpha from Moonstone Pack, watching with calculated interest. The pack treasurer, whose gambling debts were apparently legendary. Several council members clustered near the windows, their expressions ranging from disgust to barely masked rage at seeing their alpha dance with someone so beneath his station. There, Jamie's grip tightened almost imperceptibly. My left, near the balcony doors. Don't look directly. Mickey waited 2 beats, then let her gaze drift naturally across the room. Beta Marcus stood half-hidden by shadows, his expression unreadable as he watched them spin. Jamie's second-in-command, his most trusted advisor, the man who had unrestricted access to every corner of the royal wing. The man whose ambition, Mickey suddenly remembered, had once stretched toward the Alpha's seat before Jamie's father had chosen his son as heir instead of his brother's boy. Marcus was raised with your father's brother, Mickey whispered. He thought the leadership should have gone to his bloodline. The confrontation happened in Jamie's private study, 3 hours after the gala ended. Marcus stood before the Alpha's desk, his posture relaxed despite the tension crackling through the air like lightning before a storm. Dr. Marin had positioned herself near the doorway, her medical bag conspicuously present. And Mickey sat in the corner where Jamie had ordered her, close enough to witness but far enough from immediate danger. You asked to see me, Alpha? Marcus's tone was perfectly calibrated, respectful without being servile, familiar without presuming equality. 20 years of friendship evident in every word. Jamie didn't answer immediately. He simply placed the empty vial on his desk with a soft click that seemed to echo in the silence. Marcus's eyes flicked to it. Nothing changed in his expression, but Mickey saw his fingers twitch, just once, just barely. A tell. We found this in Connor's bed, Jamie said quietly. Too quietly. The kind of quiet that preceded violence. Wolfsbane extract, diluted precisely enough to cause chronic illness without immediate death. The kind of preparation that requires medical knowledge and months of patient access. That's... Marcus started forward, his face arranging itself into shock. My God, Jamie, who would? Don't. The single word cracked like a whip. Jamie rose from his chair, and the alpha power that rolled off him made even Marin bare her throat in instinctive submission. Don't insult me by pretending. We know it was you, Marcus. We've known for 3 days. This meeting is merely courtesy, a chance to explain yourself before I rip out your throat. Something shifted in Marcus's expression. The mask of friendship cracked, and what emerged underneath was cold and bitter and old. Courtesy, he repeated, laughing without humor. You want courtesy after you parade that thing around like she's something precious. He jerked his chin toward Mickey. After you let a wolfless abomination touch your son, sleep in your wing, dance with her in front of the entire pack like she's the reason my son is still alive. Jamie's voice was deadly calm. Because she is, Marcus. She's the only reason Connor survived your poison. She's a weakness, Marcus roared, his control finally shattering. Can't you see that? Your father would be ashamed. A true alpha doesn't need a human woman to protect his heir. You've become soft, Jamie, dependent on something that doesn't even have a wolf. And you expect the pack to follow you into battle, to trust you with their lives when you can't even keep your own house strong. My house, Jamie said softly, was being poisoned from within by the man I trusted most. Tell me, cousin, when did you decide my son needed to die? When did his 3-year-old life become an acceptable sacrifice for your ambition? Marcus's jaw clenched. It should have been me. Your father promised my father. Before you were even born, the leadership was supposed to pass to our bloodline. But then you came along, and suddenly that promise meant nothing. So you waited. Dr. Marin's voice cut through the tension like a scalpel. Waited until Jamie's mate died. Waited until Connor was born weak. Saw your opportunity to eliminate the heir and destabilize the alpha until he could be challenged. It would have worked, Marcus snarled, if not for her. His hatred as he stared at Mickey was palpable, a living thing. A wolfless nobody saves the day. It's pathetic. You're pathetic, Jamie. Choosing her over your own blood, over tradition. She is my blood now. Jamie's words fell like stones into still water. And you're nothing but a traitor. This is why Pack secrets are never truly buried. And this was only the first secret that Pack was hiding. Mickey should have known Marcus wouldn't go quietly. Jamie had locked him in the holding cells beneath the pack house, planning to convene a formal tribunal at dawn. But tribal law demanded the Alpha lead the traditional moon hunt, a ceremonial chase through the forest that affirmed the pack's connection to their wild nature. Jamie had been reluctant to leave, but Dr. Marin had assured him the cells were secure, the guards loyal. They'd both underestimated a desperate man's cunning. The first sign of danger was the silence. Mickey had been reading to Connor in the nursery, his small body curled against her side, when she realized she couldn't hear the guards' usual patrol footsteps in the corridor. Her grandmother's voice whispered through her memory. When the forest goes quiet, little one, predators are near. She set the book aside carefully, her heart beginning to hammer. Connor, sweetie, we're going to play a game. The toddler looked up at her with Jamie's golden eyes, too intelligent for his age. Hide and seek. Exactly. Mickey lifted him from the reading chair, her mind racing. The nursery had no secondary exit. The main door was the only way out, and if Marcus had gotten past the guards. The door handle turned slowly, deliberately. Mickey's breath caught. She looked around wildly. The wardrobe was too obvious, under the bed too exposed. Her eyes landed on the servant's laundry chute in the corner, installed decades ago when the wing had housed multiple nursemaids. It was narrow, dark, and descended 2 floors to the washing rooms. It was also their only chance. We're going on an adventure, she whispered to Connor, carrying him to the chute. You're going to be very brave and very quiet, okay? Like a wolf on the hunt. She could hear footsteps now, measured and unhurried. Marcus knew she had nowhere to run. Mickey opened the chute and looked down into darkness. It was barely wide enough for her shoulders, let alone both of them. But Connor was small, and she'd spent her whole life making herself small, invisible, unnoticed. She climbed in feet first, holding Connor tight against her chest. The metal walls were cold and treacherously smooth. She braced her back against one side, her feet against the other, and began a controlled descent into blackness just as the nursery door crashed open. You can't hide from me, little Omega. Marcus's voice drifted down the chute, distorted by the metal tunnel. I can smell fear. I can track heartbeats. Every wolf in this pack could find you in minutes. But Mickey didn't have a wolf, and neither did Connor, not yet. His wolf spirit wouldn't emerge for years, which meant their scent was purely human, easily masked by the lingering soap and detergent smell of the laundry chute. She pressed her hand over Connor's mouth, feeling his rapid breaths against her palm. Her own breathing was too loud, too fast. She forced herself to slow it, to become the emptiness everyone always said she was. Just a hollow girl with a child, descending through darkness. Above, she heard Marcus tearing apart the nursery, furniture overturning, fabric ripping. When I find you, he called out, his voice echoing, I'll make it quick for the boy. He's innocent in this. But you've corrupted everything, made Jamie weak. For that, you'll suffer. Mickey's feet touched bottom. The laundry room was dark, illuminated only by moonlight through high windows. Industrial washing machines hulked like sleeping beasts. She could hear wolves howling in the distance, the hunt still ongoing. Jamie was miles away. Connor whimpered against her chest, and Mickey held him tighter. SHH, baby, she breathed. Mama's got you. The word slipped out unbidden, but it felt right. Jamie found them in the boiler room. Mickey had barricaded herself and Connor behind a wall of old furniture and broken machinery, armed with nothing but a rusted pipe and the fierce determination that she would die before letting Marcus touch the child in her arms. She'd heard the beta prowling through the lower levels for what felt like hours, his wolf's snarls echoing through the ventilation shafts. Then suddenly the hunting howls had changed, grown closer, more urgent. The boiler room door exploded inward, and Mickey raised her pathetic weapon with shaking hands, only to see Jamie standing in the doorway, still half-shifted, his eyes blazing gold and his chest heaving. Behind him, she could see Marcus's broken body being dragged away by pack enforcers. "Connor," Jamie breathed, and Mickey had never heard such raw relief in anyone's voice. "He's safe," she managed, her own voice cracking. "He's—" Jamie crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled them both into his arms, a crushing embrace that smelled of forest and fury and home. Connor made a happy sound and wrapped his small arms around his father's neck, but Jamie's eyes never left Mickey's face. "I thought I'd lost you both," he said hoarsely. "When we returned and found the guards unconscious, the nursery destroyed." His hand cupped her face with a gentleness that seemed impossible from someone who just killed with his bare hands. "You protected him, hid where no wolf could track you. How did you?" "I didn't have a wolf to give us away." Mickey smiled weakly. "Turns out being empty has its advantages." Something fierce and possessive flashed across Jamie's expression. "You're not empty, you're everything." The formal pack assembly was called for dawn. Every member of Silver Ridge gathered in the grand hall, along with the visiting alphas who'd remained after the gala, drawn by rumors of betrayal and bloodshed. Mickey stood beside Jamie on the raised platform, acutely aware of her borrowed clothes and tangled hair, of how utterly out of place she looked next to the alpha's commanding presence. Jamie's voice rang out across the assembled wolves, brooking no interruption. "Beta Marcus attempted to murder my son and the woman who saved his life. He confessed to months of systematic poisoning, driven by ambition and old grudges. Pack law is clear. The penalty for treason is death. I've carried out that sentence." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, some approving, others uncertain. "But his betrayal revealed something else," Jamie continued, his hand finding Mickey's. His fingers laced through hers, warm and sure. "It revealed how deeply we've failed to see strength in unconventional forms. This woman, this wolfless Omega you've mocked and scorned, survived an attack from a fully shifted Beta using nothing but her wits and her love for my son. She is braver than half the warriors in this room." Mickey's breath caught as Jamie turned to face her fully, still holding her hand, his expression open in a way she'd never seen. "Mickey of no pack and no wolf," he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. "You've asked nothing from us, expected nothing, and yet you've given everything. You saved my son. You saved me from my own grief. You've shown me that true strength isn't about how loud you can roar, it's about how fiercely you can love." He dropped to one knee, and the entire assembly gasped. "Be my Luna," Jamie said simply. "Not because Connor needs you, though he does. Not because the pack needs you, though we do. But because I need you. Because you've made me believe again that broken things can still be whole." Mickey looked down at the most powerful alpha in 3 territories kneeling before her, offering everything. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, stronger. "Yes. If you want to know what happened after the alpha discovered the truth, you're already in the right place."